The corridor hummed like a living thing, the air thick with recycled warmth and the scent of metal and ozone. Commander Nathan Hale adjusted the collar of his Earthfleet uniform, feeling it bite at his neck as if in protest. The ship, Eclipsera, wasn't human-built. It moved differently, breathed differently, designed by the Lithari, a species whose very architecture seemed to curve around emotion instead of geometry. Every hallway looked too smooth, too organic, as though it had grown rather than been welded. He'd spent the last 3 years negotiating with aliens, fighting them, then saving them, and now, by the Council's infinite wisdom, living with one. His boots echoed down the curved corridor until he stopped in front of cabin A27. The digital plaque pulsed once, reading his name, then flickered, adding a second one. Kyra Velen. Lithari designation. Female. Assigned companion. He exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. So this is how peace works, he muttered. One treaty, one shared cabin. When the door hissed open, he didn't know what he expected. Perhaps some tall, scaled diplomat or a cold-eyed soldier. What he got instead froze him mid-step. She was standing by the observation window, framed against the swirl of a blue nebula. Her skin wasn't the cold gray of most Lithari he'd seen. It shimmered faintly, like the surface of deep water catching starlight. Her hair was silver white, cascading down a slim back, and she wore the deep violet uniform of the Lithari Liaison Corps. When she turned, her eyes caught the light, luminescent, a mix of violet and gold. Alien, yes, but there was something startlingly human in the way she looked at him. Appraising, cautious, as if she was trying to read more than his posture. You are Commander Hale, she said softly. Her voice was melodic, shaped by accent but smooth enough to pass for calm. That's me, he said, trying not to stare too long. And you're my, assigned partner, according to the treaty's generous fine print. A flicker of amusement passed through her gaze. Cohabitation Clause. Article 17. It encourages species familiarity to promote interrelational harmony. Yeah, Nathan muttered, dropping his duffel on the nearest seat. In English, that means we're stuck together. Silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's environmental core. She watched him as he unpacked a human jacket, an old datapad, a framed hollow image of a younger version of himself standing beside a brown-haired woman. Her eyes lingered there a second too long. She was important to you, Kyra said quietly. Yeah, he said, setting the photo face down. She didn't survive the war. Something flickered across the alien woman's expression, an echo of understanding. Many didn't. On both sides. Nathan nodded, not looking up. That's why this treaty feels like a joke. You can't legislate peace into people who buried their families under alien skies. She tilted her head slightly. And yet you signed it. Duty, he said simply. And hope that someone smarter than me knows what they're doing. Kyra walked closer, her steps soundless on the curved floor. The air between them shifted. A faint electric tension that wasn't just cultural difference. Her scent, something floral, something metallic, brushed past him like a whisper. The quarters are small, she said finally. We may have to compromise certain personal boundaries. He looked around the cabin. One bed broad, but still one. A shared console. A single washing unit. No partitions. No privacy. Nathan gave a low laugh. This treaty just keeps on giving. She didn't smile this time. Instead, she moved toward the door panel. Her hand hovered over the locking mechanism, then pressed it. The door sealed with a soft hiss. Red light blinking once to indicate lockdown. Nathan straightened. Hey, why'd you do that? Kyra's voice dropped lower, her tone unreadable. It is protocol. During initial cohabitation, outside access must be restricted until mutual trust is established. That's convenient, he said dryly. So, we just sit here and bond? Her gaze didn't waver. If you prefer the word. He folded his arms. And what if I need to leave? You won't, she said, then hesitated. At least not yet. There was something behind those words. A flicker of unease, maybe even fear. He caught it in her tone, subtle but real. Nathan studied her for a moment longer. "You're not telling me everything." Her jaw tightened. "Neither are you." He blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" But she turned away, her gaze going back to the nebula. The stars outside pulsed faintly, painting her face in shifting blues. Nathan sighed, rubbing his temple. "Fine. You keep your secrets. I'll keep mine." He sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his datapad, trying to ignore how aware he was of her presence. The silence felt heavier than space itself. Somewhere deep in the ship, an energy conduit hummed low, like the sound of a heartbeat. After a while, she spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. "Do you humans always carry images of your dead?" He glanced up, caught off guard. "We remember. It's how we deal with loss." She nodded slowly, still not looking at him. "On Lythar, we release them into memory streams. The moment you let them go, they fade from your mind. That is how we deal." "That sounds awful," Nathan said softly. She turned her head, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "It is peace. Why hold pain when you can forget it?" "Because forgetting means losing who they were," he said. "And who you were when they mattered." For the first time, something broke through her calm composure. A tiny crease between her brows, a look of confusion, maybe even awe. "You choose to hurt?" she asked quietly. "I choose to remember," he said. The air between them felt heavier again, not hostile now, but something else. Something that hummed quietly in his chest. Kyra looked back to the stars. "Perhaps that is why your species frightens us," she said softly. "You fight not just for life, but for ghosts." Nathan gave a faint, crooked smile. "And yet here we are, sharing a cabin." She didn't smile back, but her eyes softened. "Perhaps peace will not come from treaties, but from understanding small things." A long silence followed. The nebula's light dimmed as the ship rotated, plunging the cabin into low night mode. Nathan leaned back, closing his eyes, listening to the hum of alien systems, the faint rhythm of her breathing. Just as he began to drift, a soft sound broke the quiet, the whisper of movement. He opened his eyes. Kyra stood at the door, her hand pressed against the lock again. This time, the light on the panel pulsed faster and override. "Wait," he said, sitting up. "What are you doing?" She turned, her expression unreadable, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Someone tried to override the security protocol from the corridor," she said quietly. "We are being monitored." He frowned. "By who?" Her gaze flicked to the vent above. "Not all aboard this vessel wish for peace, Commander. Keep your human secrets safe tonight." The door light turned solid red. Complete lockdown. She stepped closer to him, her voice barely above a breath. "Sleep, Nathan Hale. I will keep watch." And as the nebula's last flicker faded into darkness, he realized he didn't know whether she had locked the door for safety, or for something else entirely. The cabin lights dimmed until only the soft pulse of the nebula's glow slipped through the viewport. Nathan sat upright on the edge of the bed, still half expecting the door to unlock or an alarm to sound. Nothing. Only the hum of the ship and Kyra's quiet breathing. She hadn't moved from where she stood by the door, one hand still resting near the lock as if ready to defend it. The faint light caught the metallic sheen of her skin and the shimmer in her hair. He could see the tension in her shoulders. "You planning on standing guard all night?" he asked finally. "If necessary," she said without turning. Nathan gave a small, humorless laugh. "I thought you were assigned as my assistant, not my bodyguard." "Perhaps," she said. "The two are not so different tonight." He leaned back against the wall. "That's supposed to be comforting?" She glanced at him, a tiny, reluctant smile flickering. "No. Honest." Silence again, awkward, suspended but not unfriendly this time. After a while, Nathan rubbed his hands together, trying to chase off the chill creeping through the room. Temperatures dropping. Power fluctuation. Kyra's expression tightened. Not fluctuation. Suppression. Someone is testing the backup grid. Testing? He frowned. In the middle of lights out? Before she could answer, the cabin went dark. The hum of the air filters cut off, replaced by a heavy stillness. For a heartbeat, they could hear nothing but each other's breathing. Then a soft emergency glow rippled through the walls. Dim, blue, ghost-like. Guess that answers that, Nathan said. So much for climate control. Kyra moved to the console, fingers brushing over alien glyphs that refused to respond. Main access is blocked. Whoever is doing this doesn't want us contacting the bridge. Or leaving the room. She looked up, eyes glowing faintly in the low light. Do you still believe this is only about sharing quarters, Commander? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, crossing the cabin to where she knelt by the control panel. Let me try. You won't understand the interface. Maybe not, he said. But electricity's still electricity. He pulled the panel loose, sparks jumping. See? Same as human wiring, just prettier. Kyra crouched beside him, close enough that her shoulder brushed his. Her scent, something like rain over metal, caught him off guard. You risk shock, she murmured. He grinned faintly. Story of my life. Her lips curved just slightly, then faded. You laugh easily for someone afraid of me. Who says I'm afraid? You avoid my eyes when you speak. He glanced up at her then, deliberately holding her gaze. The alien glow in her irises pulsed softly, golden rings within violet. I'm looking now. For a moment neither moved. Then a sudden crack of static jumped from the open panel, throwing a spark between them. Kyra flinched, her hand flying up instinctively, and the current leapt through her palm into Nathan's wrist. He hissed, jerking back, but she caught his arm quickly, pressing her other hand against the burn. The shock faded, replaced by a strange warmth. Her skin was cool, almost soothing. I told you, she said softly. Electricity doesn't care who laughs. Nathan looked down at her hand still on his arm. You're full of surprises. Her eyes flicked up to meet his. And you keep touching things you shouldn't. Before he could reply, the cabin lights sputtered back on for a heartbeat. Then everything lurched. The ship tilted violently to one side, throwing them both against the wall. An alarm blared somewhere deep in the hull. What the? Nathan started, but Kyra was already moving. Stabilizers offline, she shouted. She grabbed a handheld device from her belt and slammed it into the console. Maglocks failing. The floor pitched again. A loose container slid across the cabin toward them. Nathan lunged, catching it before it smashed into the viewport. Tell me this is normal on Lithari ships, he yelled. Only during sabotage. The lights flickered once more, and then the room steadied. The alarm cut off, leaving an echoing quiet that felt even louder. Nathan exhaled, still holding the crate. You call that peacekeeping? He said. Kyra straightened, hair disheveled, breathing fast. Whoever is monitoring us just made their move. They wanted to see how we react under pressure. And, her expression softened slightly, we did not kill each other. That will disappoint them. Nathan set the crate down carefully. Maybe they were hoping we'd get cozy instead. Kyra blinked, clearly unsure if he was joking. Then she laughed. A short, musical sound that surprised even her. You make light of danger. I make light of everything, he said. Otherwise, it wins. Something in that answer quieted her. She turned back to the viewport, watching the streak of distant stars. Humans hide pain with humor. Lithari hide it with silence. Both are masks. And what's underneath yours? Nathan asked. She hesitated, then said, Orders. Orders. Kyra nodded slowly. Classified ones. You are not my first assignment, Commander Hale, but you may be my last. He frowned. Meaning? Her gaze stayed on the stars. Meaning that if this treaty fails, my people will not send diplomats next time. He studied her face. So calm, so careful. And for the first time, he saw the exhaustion beneath it, the weight of expectation. You really believe war could start again? He asked quietly. She turned to him, eyes reflecting the faint blue glow of space. War never ended. It only changed its weapons. The console beeped softly, a sign that auxiliary power was stabilizing. Nathan glanced at the readout, then back at her. You've got access codes to systems I didn't even know existed. You're not just a secretary. Kyra's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. There are things you are safer not knowing. He stepped closer. I'm already locked in with you. I'd say it's a little late for safe. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. But then her shoulders dropped, the fight leaving her posture. I was assigned to ensure you live long enough to attend the treaty summit on Arctis. There are factions on both sides that want to prevent that. Nathan blinked. So this, he gestured around the cabin, isn't diplomacy. It's protection. She nodded once. And surveillance. He gave a low whistle. You guarding me or spying on me? Both, she said, and her honesty caught him off guard again. But not for the reasons you think. He studied her a moment longer, then said softly, You locked that door to keep danger out, didn't you? Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Yes, though I didn't realize the danger might already be inside. Their eyes met again. The tension between them wasn't fear anymore. It was awareness, fragile and electric. Nathan finally exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, if you're gonna keep me alive, at least tell me your first name means something other than trouble. Kyra blinked, as if surprised by the question. It means star at the end of night. That's poetic. She gave a faint smile. It sounds better in my language. He nodded slowly. Still fits. The emergency lights flickered once more, and the ship's hum settled into an uneasy calm. Kyra stepped back from the console, folding her hands behind her. You should rest, she said. The systems will hold for now. And you, I will watch the door. Nathan shook his head, half smiling. You really think someone's coming for me? Not tonight, she said softly, but soon. He watched her a moment longer, the way the soft blue light outlined her profile, the quiet strength in her posture. Then he lay back, eyes on the ceiling, listening to the ship's pulse. Outside, the stars drifted past, silent witnesses to a peace that was starting to feel like a lie. And somewhere in that silence, Nathan realized that for all her secrets, he trusted her more than anyone else aboard. Still, one question wouldn't leave his mind. If she'd been sent to protect him, then who was going to protect her? Nathan woke before the ship's lights had fully warmed. The air in the cabin felt too still, too heavy, like it had been holding its breath all night. Kyra was still by the viewport, her figure barely a silhouette against the faint light of a nearby moon. She hadn't moved since he'd fallen asleep. He sat up quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. You ever sleep? He asked. She didn't turn. Not like humans. We rest in patterns. 10 minutes every cycle. That explains why you're still standing. A faint hum filled the air as she tapped the console. Systems stable again. You can relax. He gave a tired half-smile. That's the thing, Kyra. I don't think I remember how. She looked over her shoulder then, and for a heartbeat he thought she might say something personal. But the console chimed softly, interrupting. She turned back to it, her hands flying over alien glyphs faster than he'd seen before. What's that? Nathan asked. Routine report, she said too quickly. Her voice was steady, but something in her movements wasn't. The gestures were too sharp, her eyes darting to the corner display, as though she was hiding something. Nathan stood, crossing the short distance between them. Let me guess, classified? Kyra froze. Yes. He frowned. You didn't even pretend to deny it this time. I do not lie easily, she said. That's a good habit, Nathan replied. But it doesn't make this look any better. He leaned slightly, trying to see the display. The alien script shimmered across the screen in waves, the words pulsing faintly. Most of it he couldn't understand, but a small translation subroutine blinked in the corner of his wristpad. Out of reflex, he synced the translator. The first decoded line made his blood run cold. Target hail, monitor behavioral deviations. Report daily. Nathan's pulse thudded in his ears. Target hail, he repeated aloud. Kyra's hands froze above the console. You weren't meant to see that. I noticed, he said, his voice suddenly sharp. You've been reporting on me? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Answer me, Nathan snapped. Finally, she whispered, yes. He stepped back, every instinct in his body going rigid. You're spying on me. Kyra turned, her expression tight with something between guilt and pain. It isn't what you think. Oh, it's exactly what I think. You locked that door, kept me from talking to command, and now I find secret logs calling me a target. She winced at the word. Please let me explain. Explain. Nathan barked a laugh that had no humor in it. Sure. Tell me how this is all part of interspecies friendship. Tell me this is what peace looks like. Her hands clenched at her sides. You don't understand what they're planning. Who? She looked toward the viewport as if afraid the stars might be listening. All of them, she said softly. Your council, my command, the treaty makers, they're not protecting peace. They're managing a countdown. He stared at her. What the hell does that mean? Kyra swallowed hard. It means the treaty is a mask. A cover until the decision is made who will control the next generation of soldiers. Human or Lithari? Nathan blinked. You think the treaty's about breeding armies? Not breeding, she said bitterly. Assimilation. Integration. The next species won't be human or Lithari, it'll be both. Created, engineered, ordered. He stared, stunned. You're telling me they're planning to merge us? Yes, she said, her voice trembling. You were chosen as a test subject, Nathan Hale. Not by me, by the council. I was sent to watch you, not for what you know, but for what you feel. Nathan took a slow step back, the words cutting through him like static. Feel? She looked away. They wanted to see if emotional proximity could override genetic memory of war. If trust could be rebuilt biologically. He shook his head. You're saying this, he gestured between them, was some experiment? Kyra's voice cracked. At first, yes. He turned away, pacing to the other side of the cabin, gripping the metal edge of the desk until his knuckles went white. At first, he repeated quietly. So what changed? You get tired of lying? She didn't answer. The silence stretched until he turned, his anger burning through confusion. Say something. Her eyes glistened faintly in the light. I stopped sending the reports 2 days ago. He frowned. Why? Because I couldn't write what they wanted. And what did they want? To prove humans are incapable of trust, she said. To justify starting over without you. Nathan's voice softened despite himself. And you didn't believe that? Kyra's composure finally cracked. I wanted to believe it. I was trained to. I told myself you were violent, unpredictable, impossible to coexist with, but then you burned your hand fixing a system you didn't have to touch. You laughed in fear. You kept a photo of someone you lost. You grieved instead of forgetting. And for the first time, I realized... She stopped, voice breaking. I realized they were wrong. Nathan's anger faltered, replaced by something heavier. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the exhaustion beneath her perfect calm, the strain behind every word. So now what? He asked quietly. You stopped sending reports, and what? Your command just lets it go? Her lips parted, but no sound came. That was answer enough. They'll come for you, he said softly. They already have, she whispered. As if on cue, the console emitted a low, pulsing tone, an encrypted signal. Kyra moved fast, hitting a sequence of glyphs, but the screen flashed red. Remote override detected. Nathan reached for her arm. Kyra, don't touch it, she snapped, then winced at her own tone. The signal grew louder, echoing through the walls. They're trying to extract data logs. Everything I've stored about you, about us. Shut it down. I can't. Without thinking, Nathan slammed his fist into the console, shorting out the power node. Sparks burst across the panel. The noise cut off abruptly, leaving the cabin in silence again. Smoke curled upward, faint and acrid. Kyra stared at him wide-eyed. You just destroyed a Class 1 relay. He flexed his burned knuckles. Guess I'm not very diplomatic. Something in her expression broke then. A mix of disbelief and something almost tender. You risked your own standing to protect me. He gave a small shrug. I couldn't let them take what's not theirs. For a moment she just looked at him, then said quietly, You are nothing like what they told me. Nathan stepped closer. Then maybe you should stop listening to them. Kyra met his eyes, and for the first time didn't look away. The air between them felt charged, too still, too intimate. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke. You don't understand, Nathan. Protecting you wasn't my mission. It was the reason I exist. If you die, the treaty collapses. If the treaty collapses, so does everything I was created for. Created for? Her eyes flickered with something raw. I am not born like you. I was made, biologically engineered to be the bridge between our species. Half Lithri, half something else. That's why they chose me. Because I could feel both worlds. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest. Half human. She nodded slowly. And now I've betrayed them by proving that humans don't need to be remade to be understood. He stared at her, the truth settling like gravity. Kyra, what are they going to do when they find out? She closed her eyes. They already have. Outside the viewport, the stars shifted, no, moved. A dark shape passed over the moonlight, silent and massive. Another vessel, cloaked, descending. Nathan's voice dropped to a whisper. Is that? Yes, Kyra said softly, eyes fixed on the shadow. My people. The lights flickered, the console hissed, and the cabin door pulsed red again. Locked, not by her this time. Kyra turned to him, fear now naked in her expression. They're not here for peace, Nathan. They're here for me. The alarm screamed through the corridors, a shrill echo that clawed through the thin walls of their shared cabin. Red light pulsed across the metallic surfaces like the ship's heartbeat had gone mad. Ryan was already half-dressed, grabbing for his uniform jacket when the first explosion rolled through the deck. Deep, muffled, and wrong. He stumbled against the wall, feeling the tremor in his bones. The ship was under attack or worse, sabotaged from within. Across the small cabin, Alira was already at the control panel, her eyes flicking fast over the screens. Main reactor breach, containment field failing, she said, voice calm but sharp-edged. Her species' composure under stress was almost unnatural, and somehow that calm only made Ryan's chest tighten harder. Who did this? He asked, snapping his communicator on. Static. Nothing. The comm grid was dead. I don't know, Alira said. Her pale hands danced over the holographic keys, her bioluminescent veins glowing faint blue as they pulsed faster. But your people think it's us. He froze mid-step. What? She turned toward him. The light outside their cabin flickered again, throwing her in and out of shadow. The council broadcast, your command suspects Zyran saboteurs. They've locked down every alien quarter on the ship, including mine. The words hit like cold water. That explained the sealed doors, the sudden silence of the corridors. They think you did this, he murmured, staring at her. She didn't look away. Do you? For a heartbeat, all Ryan heard was the pulse of the emergency lights. He remembered her hand shaking slightly in the dark the night of the power loss, the fear in her eyes when she'd confessed she was here to protect him. No, he said finally, but the ship's not going to wait for me to prove it. He crossed to the door and hit the manual release, but it refused to open. Lockdown protocol, complete isolation. He slammed his palm against the panel, frustration boiling. We're trapped again, he said through clenched teeth. Not by me this time, she replied softly. Her voice carried a note of guilt that twisted inside him. He turned to her, saw the flicker of fear behind her control, and something in him broke. You can override it, can't you? Not without exposing my link signature. If I do, they'll trace it directly to me, and I'll be marked as the saboteur. He stared at her, torn between duty and instinct. Outside, another blast rocked the hull. The lights dimmed, then steadied weakly. "Then we need another way," he said. He crossed to the maintenance hatch at the far wall, pried it open, and peered into the narrow crawl space of wires and conduits. "If we can get to the lower access ring, I can reach the engineering core. Maybe reroute power manually." She hesitated, then followed him toward the hatch. "Ryan," she said quietly, "if you leave the cabin, the system will flag your ID as non-compliant. You'll be branded a suspect, too." He gave a dry laugh. "Guess we'll match then." For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. She climbed in first, her slender form moving gracefully through the confined space. He followed, the glow from her skin casting eerie reflections along the metal. They crawled in silence for several minutes, the hum of the ship sounding fainter here, distant and untrustworthy. When they reached the first junction, Elira paused and placed her hand against a conduit. The faint glow beneath her skin brightened, pulsing in rhythm with the current. "I can feel the breach," she said, eyes half closed. "The reactor isn't failing. It's being starved. Someone's diverting energy from inside the system itself." "Sabotage confirmed," he muttered. "But who the hell?" He stopped when her hand trembled. "Elira?" Her expression had changed. Fear, but not of him. "It's not just sabotage," she whispered. "It's a signal. A signal. Someone's calling something here." A chill ran down his spine. Before he could respond, the corridor behind them shook violently. A pressure wave rolled through the ducts, slamming him against the wall. The lights went out entirely. He caught Elira's arm in the darkness. Her skin burned hot, almost feverish. "We have to move," he shouted. They scrambled through the dark crawlspace, guided only by her dim glow until they burst into a maintenance bay below engineering. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes, and a faint electric smell filled the air. Ryan pulled her down behind a console as another explosion echoed from below. "This isn't random," he said, breath ragged. "Someone's trying to take the ship offline. Or silence it," she said, "before it sends a distress call." The weight of her words hit hard. Whoever was behind this didn't want survivors. He looked at her, at the faint tremble of her fingers, the glint of her eyes in the half-dark, and something wordless passed between them. "You knew something like this could happen," he said slowly. She nodded, barely. "My orders were to protect you if the treaty failed. It was never about secretaries or diplomacy. Someone thought your command might break the accord first. But now—" She looked up at the ceiling where the alarms screamed and the lights flashed erratically. "Now it's worse. Much worse." "You think this was planned?" he asked. "By both sides," she said quietly. "If the humans blame my people for this, the treaty ends. The fleets mobilize. War returns. And this time, it won't stop at one system." He stared at her, realization dawning too late. "They sent us here together as insurance. To keep peace, or to witness its failure." "Yes," she whispered. "But someone on this ship doesn't want peace." The deck lurched again. She stumbled forward into him, her hands braced against his chest. The moment held, a heartbeat too long, before she pulled back, her breath unsteady. "You're bleeding," she said. He touched his forehead. Warm blood trickled from a shallow cut. "Guess I am." She reached up, wiping it away with a tenderness that stunned him. Her eyes met his, alien and impossibly human at the same time. "I don't want to lose you to this," she said, voice breaking for the first time. He didn't answer, just looked at her and felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Then the console near them sparked to life. A holographic map flickered into view, showing the ship's internal network, and a spreading red mark moving through the corridors like infection. "That's the saboteur," Ryan said. "Whoever it is, they're heading for the reactor." "Then we go after them," she said. "Together." He hesitated. "If we do this, there's no going back." She met his gaze. "There never was." He grabbed his weapon, offered her a nod, and together they slipped into the flickering corridor beyond. The air smelled of ozone and burning metal. The lights dimmed to a pulse that matched his heartbeat. And for the first time since the treaty began, Ryan realized peace wasn't being protected, it was being hunted. They ran toward the sound of war rising inside the ship. The aftermath of the sabotage left the ship limping through silence. Half the decks were sealed, power rerouted, and the stars outside moved slower than they ever had, like time itself was holding its breath. For the first time since the explosion, Ryan could hear his own heartbeat instead of alarms. And in the flickering quiet of the cabin, he could also hear hers. Alira sat on the opposite bunk, her arm wrapped in a glowing bio-bandage that pulsed with faint light. She hadn't spoken since they returned from engineering. She didn't need to. Ryan could feel the words hanging between them like static. "We got lucky," he said finally, voice low. She looked up, her silver-blue eyes meeting his. "You mean we survived?" "Yeah," he muttered. "That counts for luck out here." A thin smile touched her lips, the first since the attack. "Your definition of luck is very human." "And yours?" he asked. "We call it grace," she said softly. "Survival that carries meaning." The way she said it, it hit somewhere deep. He looked away, busying himself with the half-burnt datapad on the table, but he couldn't shake her voice from his head. The silence between them had changed since the firefight. It wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy, alive, and filled with things neither dared say. 2 days passed in the limbo of repairs and interrogations. The command staff wanted answers, why an alien and a human had disobeyed lockdown orders together. Ryan took the blame, claiming it had been his idea to reroute through the maintenance shafts. Alira didn't contradict him, but when the officers left, she stood for a long time staring at the closed door. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "You'd be under full surveillance if I hadn't," he replied. "And so would I," she said. Her tone was calm, but her shoulders were trembling. "My superiors have already contacted me. They know." He turned toward her. "Know what?" "That I've crossed a line." She hesitated, the words catching like shards in her throat. "They detected emotional interference in my link signatures." "That means I felt something?" he asked quietly. Her gaze snapped to him, her eyes reflecting light like glass. "Among my kind, it's forbidden. We are trained to suppress emotional tethering during joint assignments. Clouds our objectivity. It makes us unpredictable. And they think that's a flaw?" he said, anger rising. "It's considered dishonor," she whispered. "If they prove it, they'll recall me. Maybe erase my memory of this assignment entirely." Ryan stared at her, the weight of it hitting hard. "You'd forget everything? Even—" He trailed off. She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. The ship hummed faintly, the only sound between them. Then she looked up, her voice barely audible. "I'm supposed to file a distance order. Meaning, I am to limit contact with you to professional necessity. No private quarters. No unsupervised dialogue. No." She stopped, swallowing hard. "No connection." He laughed under his breath, but it wasn't humor. It was disbelief. "After everything we went through down there? After saving the ship? Duty doesn't care about sentiment," she said. "And neither does the treaty." Ryan took a slow breath, trying to steady the pulse pounding in his neck. "Maybe that's the problem." She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "This whole damn treaty, it's built on control. Your people pretending to understand us, ours pretending not to fear you. We call it peace, but it feels more like management." "You think it's a lie?" she said, studying him. "I think it's theater," he answered. "We sign the papers, smile for the cameras, and then keep 1,000 rules between us so no one gets too close. So no one ever actually trusts anyone." Alira looked down at her hands, the faint blue glow tracing her veins. "Maybe that's why they assigned me to you. Because I'm expendable? Because you were honest," she said. "They wanted to test whether true coexistence was even possible, if one human and one Zyran could share space without hate." "And we failed?" he asked. Her voice softened. "No, we succeeded too well." The air felt charged between them. He could feel her watching him, could see the reflection of the dim lights shimmering across her skin like liquid starlight. The distance she was supposed to keep didn't exist in that moment. When she finally stood, her movements were slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. "If I stay here," she said, "I lose everything that made me who I am." He stepped closer. "And if you go, you lose everything that made you real." Something broke inside her composure then, a flicker of emotion she could no longer suppress. She turned away as though afraid he'd see the tears forming in her eyes, but her shoulders gave her away. He reached out and took her hand. It was cool at first, trembling slightly, but then her fingers tightened around his, desperate, uncertain. "We can't," she whispered. "You know that." "Maybe not," he said. "But tell me you don't want to." Her silence was answer enough. The hum of the engines filled the small cabin, low and steady, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. He could feel the warmth of her skin through his glove, the faint pulse of her bioluminescence syncing with his heartbeat. When she finally spoke again, her voice was trembling. "If they detect this connection again, they'll terminate my assignment. I'll be recalled before sunrise cycle." "Then we've got until sunrise," he said. She looked up sharply, startled, conflicted, but he didn't move closer. He just stood there, waiting. Finally, she exhaled and whispered, "You humans, you always break the rules." "That's how we make history," he said. For a moment, she almost smiled. But then her expression changed, softening with sorrow. "You don't understand. It isn't just my honor. If I disobey, they might." The words cut off as her wrist communicator pulsed. A faint voice spoke in her native language, sharp, rhythmic, authoritative. Her superiors. She stiffened, eyes distant, then shut the channel off. "They've ordered your reassignment," she said after a pause. "Effective immediately." "You're leaving," he said quietly. She didn't nod, but her eyes told the truth. "I don't want to," she admitted. "But I can't defy them." Ryan's chest tightened. "What happens if you do?" "I lose my name," she said, "and everything attached to it." The cabin fell silent again. The stars beyond the window drifted like ghosts, cold, unreachable. He wanted to tell her to run, to fight, to stay. But she just looked at him with that impossible stillness and said, "Goodbye, Ryan." She turned for the door. He caught her hand one last time. "You said your people call survival grace," he said. "What do you call what we're doing?" Her voice was soft, trembling. "Sin." The door slid shut behind her with a hiss. He stood there long after she was gone, staring at the space where her glow had faded, feeling the silence crawl in like frost. And for the first time since the treaty began, Ryan no longer believed in peace, he believed in her. But somewhere deep in his mind, a darker realization took root. The sabotage, the recall orders, even their forced pairing, it was all too precise, too perfect. And if his growing suspicion was right, then the treaty hadn't been built to keep peace at all. It had been built to start a war. The war drums of the void began long before anyone fired a shot. Ryan could feel it in the silence, the kind that comes before a storm. The Vanguard treaty vessel drifted through the pale stretch of uncharted space like a ghost. Its engines dimmed, its crew quiet, every officer waiting for the signal that might end everything. He hadn't seen Alira in 3 days. The recall notice came and went, but no transport ever arrived for her. She had vanished from the crew roster, erased, as though she'd never been aboard at all. Still, sometimes he thought he heard her footsteps in the corridor outside his quarters, light and deliberate. He told himself it was memory playing tricks. But then, late one night, the cabin door hissed open, and she was standing there again. Her glow was dimmer now. The veins beneath her pale skin shimmered weakly, the light of someone carrying a secret that was eating her alive. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, though he was already moving toward her. "Neither should you," she whispered back. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. "They've grounded the entire human detachment. You're being detained at first light." He froze mid-step. "For what?" "Espionage," she said. They've intercepted data suggesting you leaked the ship's route to the rebellion. That's insane, he said, anger rising fast. You know I didn't. I do, she said quickly, stepping closer. That's why I came. He saw it then, the fear behind her calm. She was shaking. Aelira, he said, softer now. What's going on? Her eyes flicked to the corner of the room, where the wall's ambient light reflected off the cabin's surface. They gave me new orders, she said. If I follow them, I save my world. If I don't... She didn't finish. Her breath caught, and she looked down, ashamed. He didn't need to ask what the orders were. The silence told him enough. You're supposed to turn me in. She nodded once. They think if I expose you, the council will trust my people again. It will stop the mobilization. It will prevent war. And if you don't? Then both our worlds burn, she said. The hum of the ship filled the silence between them, low and mournful. He took a slow breath. Then do it. Her head snapped up. What? If it saves billions of lives, do it. I can take the fall. She looked at him like he'd just struck her. You think this is about duty? She whispered. You think I came here just to follow orders? Her voice broke, raw and trembling. I came here because I couldn't do it. Because I couldn't stand the thought of watching them destroy you and calling it peace. He closed the distance between them then, his hand reaching for hers. You'll lose everything. I already have, she said. Her eyes glistened in the dim cabin light, and for the first time, he saw her not as the envoy, not as the alien who had locked him in that cabin months ago, but as the woman who had learned how to love something forbidden. Aelira, don't, she said softly, shaking her head. If you say my name like that, I'll forget who I am. He wanted to stop her tears, but his hands trembled when he touched her face. She leaned into his palm, eyes closing for one brief, fragile moment. They told me humans fall fast, she whispered. They never warned me you'd make us fall with you. He almost smiled, but his throat tightened too much for words. Then stay, he said. Forget the orders, the treaty. Stay with me. Her laughter was barely more than a breath. If I stay, I damn both worlds. If you go, I lose mine, he whispered. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The ship's dim light wrapped around them like fog, every sound fading until all that remained was the rhythm of two hearts trying to beat as one. Then she stepped closer, her hand on his chest. Her skin was cool, but her pulse was wild. This isn't how it's supposed to end, she said. It never is, he replied. And then, without hesitation, she kissed him. It wasn't soft or uncertain. It was desperate, fierce, like two people trying to breathe before drowning. Every barrier between them shattered in that instant. He could taste the electricity of her skin, feel the heat of her pulse beneath his fingertips, smell the faint metallic tang of her kind's energy. For once, the galaxy outside could burn and he wouldn't care. When they finally parted, she stayed close, her forehead against his. If they find me here, they'll kill us both, she whispered. Then they'd better knock softly, he murmured. But she didn't smile. She pulled back slowly, her eyes glimmering with tears that caught the cabin's light like diamonds. Ryan, she said quietly, if anything happens, if the ship changes course before dawn, you'll know it was me. He frowned. What do you mean? But she didn't answer. She reached into her suit pocket and pressed a small chip into his hand. Keep this. Don't open it until I'm gone. Aelira, please, she said, her voice breaking. Don't make this harder. He wanted to stop her, but the moment he moved, she stepped back, her body already fading into the half-light of the corridor. Her eyes met his one last time, soft and infinite. For what it's worth, she whispered. If I had to choose again, I'd still lock that door. And then she was gone. Ryan stood there long after the door hissed shut, the chip heavy in his palm, his heartbeat loud in the hollow quiet. He sat down slowly, staring at it. For a long time, he couldn't bring himself to look. When he finally did, the screen flickered to life, and her voice came through, recorded, quiet, trembling. If you're hearing this, Then I made my choice, it said. They'll brand me a traitor, but maybe someone has to be one for peace to be real. The truth is, the treaty wasn't built to keep our worlds apart. It was built to see if love could ever cross the line. The recording ended in static. Outside, the ship's lights dimmed. Alarms began to echo faintly through the corridors again. And in the darkness, Ryan realized what she had done. She hadn't betrayed him. She had betrayed them. She'd chosen him, and in doing so might have doomed them all. He woke to silence. Not the mechanical hum that always lulled him to sleep. Not the soft pulse of lights through the cabin's walls. Just silence, wide and hollow, like the world itself had stopped breathing. The sheets beside him were still warm, faintly scented with that strange sweetness her skin always carried, something between rain and starlight. But she wasn't there. For a long time, he just stared at the empty space, as if staring hard enough might bring her back. The memory of her last words echoed in his mind. Half confession, half goodbye. Spoken so softly he almost believed he'd dreamed them. He sat up, running a hand through his hair, feeling the heaviness of the night before. They had said everything and nothing. They had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. And yet, she had looked at him like she'd finally found home. Now only her absence remained. He stumbled to the console, checking logs, messages, anything. The ship had already left orbit. Her access codes had been revoked. Her name flagged as transferred. He felt the air leave his lungs. Transferred. That was what they called it when an officer vanished between reports, when someone was quietly removed before politics could get messy. The treaty didn't allow what they had done. Humans and Alisari weren't supposed to love each other. They were supposed to cooperate, to coexist under carefully measured distance. He could still see her eyes from last night, shimmering with tears she refused to shed, the glow at the edges dimming with guilt. If they make me choose, she'd whispered, promise you'll survive me. He hadn't answered. He just held her tighter, pretending time wasn't running out. The cabin felt smaller now, emptier. He moved to the mirror and saw himself. A tired man with eyes that looked older than he remembered. The collar of his uniform hung loose, his reflection hollowed by regret. Behind him, the single chair she always used sat neatly pushed in. Her datapad gone, her side of the bunk perfectly made. And yet, the door. The same cabin door that had started it all. The one she'd locked that first night, when he'd thought she was trying to trap him, not protect him. He glanced at it now, half expecting to see the green light of the lock's manual override. Instead, it blinked red. Engaged. He frowned and pressed the panel. Computer, unlock cabin door. The ship's AI responded in its neutral tone. Access denied. Cabin sealed under private authorization. He froze. Authorization code? Encrypted under diplomatic clearance. His heart started to pound. Identify user. The pause was long, too long. Then, Lieutenant Kayla Thren. He stepped back like the name had hit him. She'd locked it. Again. From the outside. But why? She wasn't supposed to be aboard anymore. The transfer order, her name, he'd seen it himself. He tapped the wall, fingers trembling. Kayla, he whispered. If you're doing this, if you're still here. He stopped, the words catching in his throat. The lights flickered once, dimming into the soft amber hue she used to prefer. It was the first sign he wasn't losing his mind. Then the ship shuddered, a faint vibration, like a docking clamp disengaging somewhere far below. He could feel it through the floor. He rushed to the viewport. Outside, the void stretched endless and black. Below, the blue curve of the planet receded slowly into distance. The ship was ascending, breaking orbit faster than scheduled. Alarms should have been blaring, but the silence remained eerily controlled. He turned back toward the door, breath quickening. Kayla, talk to me. What are you doing? A hiss of static filled the room, like an old transmission forcing its way through interference. Then, soft as a sigh, her voice came through. Don't move. His pulse spiked. Kayla, I don't have much time. Her voice whispered, trembling, distant, like it was traveling through the ship's hull instead of a calm. They'll trace this channel. I needed to see you, to make sure you were still safe. You left, he said, voice breaking. You said goodbye. I had to. They would have taken me apart if I stayed. But when they scanned my ship, I saw something wrong in your systems. There's a tracker buried in your core, human. Not just on you, in the vessel itself. Someone on your side doesn't want peace either. He stared at the console. That's not possible. The treaty, she cut in softly, was never peace. It was surveillance with better PR. The words hit harder than any weapon. She was risking everything again to warn him. Kayla, he said, gripping the console. Come back. We can fix this. We'll tell Command. Command already knows, she whispered. That's why I can't. The cabin light flickered again, as if reacting to her heartbeat. He could almost see her in the shadows, the way she used to stand against the wall, hands clasped, eyes quietly studying him like he was both puzzle and answer. He tried to steady his breathing. Why lock the door again? Another pause, long enough that he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, because you wouldn't have listened if I said goodbye again. The sound of her voice cracked on the last word. He pressed a hand against the cold metal door. Kayla, please, if you're out there, tell me where you are. I'm already where I shouldn't be, she said softly. They'll find me soon. I just wanted you to know. The first time I locked that door, it was orders. The second time, it's because I didn't want anyone else to have the right to walk in after I left. He felt the breath leave his body. Kayla, don't open it, even if it unlocks. Promise me. Kayla, I can help you. Promise me. He closed his eyes. I promise. Silence again. Then a faint sound through the speaker, like a breath caught between tears. I never stopped hearing your heartbeat when I closed my eyes, she said. Even now. The line cut. The lights returned to normal. The hum of the ship filled the air again, like reality resetting itself. But the door remained sealed, the red light unblinking. He stayed there for hours, maybe more, hand against the metal, as if warmth could pass through it. Somewhere beyond, in the black between stars, she was still out there, running, hunted, loving him in silence. Then, just as fatigue began to drag him toward sleep, the ship's AI spoke once more. Private message received. Audio only. He straightened instantly. Play it. Kayla's voice filled the room one last time, soft and raw and alive. If the door locks again, it means I'm coming home. The red light blinked once, twice, and then glowed steady. He didn't move, didn't breathe, the same way he hadn't that very first night. Because now the door was locked again. And from the other side, so faint he thought his heart might have imagined it, her voice whispered his name.